And good evening. We do begin tonight with new unrest erupting overnight in Los Angeles as the city braces for more violence today, possibly. Downtown LA seen its fifth consecutive day of protest as ICE carries out their raids throughout the city, with the Trump administration promising Marines are on the way. And new video of this shocking moment caught on camera. A New York Post photographer, look at this, shot in the head by a police officer's rubber bullet.
Just got shot in the head.
The New York Post slowing down the video, and look at this. You can actually see the rubber bullet as it flies through the air, hitting him right in the head. Across the country, anger and outrage boiling over. Police dispersing crowds in Austin with flares and this chaotic scene in San Fran. Dozens of protesters clashing with police. And these images from right here in New York City just coming into the newsroom tonight showing hundreds of people protesting in the streets. In just a moment, our interview with Borders czar Tom Homan, who's leading the ICE raids. We'll ask him if these protests are slowing down his operations and if it was necessary to call in the National Guard. There's a lot to get to tonight, but we want to start with NBC's Liz Kreutz, who is in Los Angeles for us tonight.
Tonight, anti-immigration enforcement protests spreading nationwide. Overnight in Austin, tear gas used to break up crowds. And in San Francisco, arrests from clashes with police. And for the fifth day in a row, protesters taking to the streets of downtown Los Angeles, upset over immigration enforcement operations underway here.
There is a way to go about things, but this isn't one to just tear families apart. It's not right to do that. 700
Marines soon to arrive to the city. Tonight, California Governor Gavin Newsom asking a court to block soldiers from enforcing immigration laws, posting the federal government is turning the military against American citizens. President Trump saying if he did not deploy them and the National Guard, things would be much worse.
If we didn't do it, there wouldn't be a Los Angeles. What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags.
President Trump noting the LAPD chief said Sunday the department was overwhelmed. But tonight, Chief Jim McDonnell telling us it's unclear what the Marines will do.
Have you been given any communication from the federal government about Marines coming here to the city?
You know, I've heard like everybody else has, mostly through the media.
Tonight, NBC News learning that the Marines could be used to provide security and transportation to ICE agents during their operations to arrest undocumented immigrants. On Capitol Hill, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth pressed by Democrats about the cost of the National Guard deployment.
Could the Secretary please address the budget? Thank you.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations.
The Pentagon revealing it will cost roughly $134 million, all after overnight new violent clashes between protesters and police. A car lit on fire, some businesses looted, including this Apple store in downtown LA. So far, more than 100 arrests have been made, and the FBI now offering a $50,000 reward for this protester who allegedly pelted ICE agents' vehicles with rocks over the weekend. This video showing a New York Post photographer getting hit in the face by a rubber bullet from police as protesters took over a major highway Sunday. Well, DHS confirming ICE agents carried out more enforcement operations Monday targeting undocumented gang members. Democratic Mayor Karen Bass demanding all ICE raids stop.
The real solution of all of this is for the administration to stop the raids.
Maria Fabila owns the black tie tuxedo just blocks from the protest. She's an immigrant herself, but does not support the protesters, saying she's been forced to temporarily close her store.
What is your message to the protesters right now?
I'm very scared. No good. No, it's very, very bad for the economy, for the state, California.
You're scared?
Yeah, very, very scared.
Liz joins us tonight live from Los Angeles once again. Liz, talk to our viewers where you are. I think you're on the 101, a major interstate there, freeway in Los Angeles. We can see, I think it's police just behind you.
Yeah, Tom. So protesters that were outside the federal building, they just within the past 20 minutes made their way here towards the major interstate, Highway 101. You can see it is closed down right now. This is rush hour. Nobody here. We see that police have stopped all of the cars, and you can see this line of police. This is the line of police that blocked protesters from actually getting onto the highway. They were able so far to successfully do that because just minutes ago there were a ton of protesters right here, and they're now all heading this way. Really, this is a bit of an escalation that we're seeing, Tom. We do know from police that they said that they made many more arrests overnight, and they said that they are combing through video right now, and anybody seen to be breaking the law will be held accountable. We're going to continue to follow these protesters, Tom. I just will say that we have not seen any Marines on the streets right now. All of the interactions with the protesters and law enforcement has been Los Angeles local authorities. We have seen the National Guard, but they have mostly just stayed at the perimeter of the federal buildings, Tom.
Liz, you know, it's hard to see, and I know there's things going on all around you. Can you explain to our viewers, it doesn't look like there's a lot of protesters there. Obviously, a lot of media, and you have the police shutting down the freeway. But for the 101 to be closed, which is a major artery in a city that already has horrific traffic, I mean, this is just a precaution?
Yep. Well, actually, we heard on Police Scanner, where we were before with the police, they were saying, protesters getting onto the highway. So these officers quickly were on standby to deploy here, and you can see more police cars here, more of these police in riot gear. This is on the 101, getting out now, trying to create a line to make sure protesters don't make it onto the freeway. There was a larger crowd of protesters when we first got to this location. They're kind of scattered at this point, so it's a little bit unclear where they're all going, but we do know there's still that confrontation happening at the federal building as well right now. And I think we're waiting to see what happens here as these police officers, LAPD officers who have batons, they look like they are prepared to fire non-lethal rounds, rubber bullets. We had heard flashbangs, kind of create a skirmish line here right on the highway. Southbound 101 in LA right now, shut down. Northbound is still moving, but moving slowly right now. This is all happening right now, Tom. We'll see how it unfolds.
Liz, I am curious. We have KNBC, our partners at KNBC, our powerhouse station there in Los Angeles, overhead, showing those police cars, showing the 101 shut down. What is this doing to the city of Los Angeles? Because, again, like I said, with traffic as bad as it is, I cannot imagine a whole half of that highway being shut down.
Yeah, Tom, the last time the highway was shut down during these protests was Sunday afternoon, not as busy of a time as Tuesday around rush hour right now. So this is going to have a big impact on the city. Lots of people are going to notice it. And that's somewhat of a difference, actually, because up until now, this is a huge city. As you know, LA, you could be in Santa Monica, you could be in the Valley, and you wouldn't notice the impact of these rallies. They have mostly been isolated to this downtown area by City Hall, by the federal buildings. There's been roadblocks here. Other parts of the city you wouldn't notice. I think blocking a freeway at this time of day is going to have an impact on a lot of people.
Liz Croy, it's great reporting all week. We appreciate having you tonight. Stand by in case anything breaks out. We will come back to you live, and stay safe. Despite the protests across the country, ICE raids are pressing forward. Earlier, I spoke to President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, who's overseeing those raids. Mr. Homan, describe the state of play right now in Los Angeles.
Right now, it's calmed down, but last night was bad. It seems that the activity really picks up at nighttime, thank God President Trump did deploy the National Guard to help protect the buildings and help protect our officers. But it's chaos. I mean, a lot of protesters are peaceful. Some of the protesters are not. Some of the protesters quickly become criminals when they burn down cars, they damage government property, and they attack our law enforcement. They're criminals, and I just wish. We all support the First Amendment. They can certainly protest and shout and cover their signs about they don't like what ICE does. But to cross that line on committing criminal activity, it's beyond the pale, and it needs to stop. And that's why President Trump sent the National Guard there to help bring order and at least protect property and protect life.
As you know, Mr. Homan, Governor Newsom has sued the Trump administration, asking a federal court to rule on the National Guard and the Marines being used, essentially saying they should only be used to protect federal property. If a judge rules in California's favor, what will you say to that?
I think it's wrong. I think President Trump's doing the right thing. Governor Newsom's late to the game. I mean, I was on the ground. I was there since last Wednesday. I was there to kick off a major operation. And Friday night, we got thousands of people, 1,000 people surrounding the federal building. We had, our agents were there, and people we arrested early that day were there and put them at great risk and did damage to the building. We had several officers hurt. He took several days for him to get there. President Trump didn't hesitate.
Have these protests stopped or slowed any single ICE raid? And if they've even stopped a single one, have they been successful?
No, they're making it more difficult. But no, we're going ahead. We're making record numbers of arrests every day. And like I say, in Los Angeles, even though you got these
Wait, but you are saying, Mr. Homan, you acknowledge they're making it more difficult? I want to make sure I understood you there. They are making these ICE raids more difficult, the demonstrators?
No, they're making it more dangerous. But they're making it more dangerous. Our officers, with the backing of other federal agencies, it's just not ICE out there anymore. We got DEA, FBI, we got U.S. Marshals, we got ATF. President Trump bought the Hall of Government to do this operation. But I want to make it clear. We've been running the ICE operation in Los Angeles every single day during this protest, and we're arresting a lot of bad people in that city, and we're going to continue to doing it. They're not going to stop us. They're not going to slow us down.
Yeah, I want to put up a tweet for you. I'm going to send it over to you there in that studio. This is what Governor Newsom put on X, right? He put the photos you see there of Marines sleeping on top of each other. This is what he wrote in that post. You sent your troops here without fuel, food, water, or a place to sleep. Here they are being forced to sleep on the floor, piled on top of one another. What do you say to that, Mr. Homan?
I'd say I ought to take a few moments, go downtown L.A. and look at the damage that's been done by these radical protesters. I mean, President Trump's saving his city. President Trump's doing what he should have done. Gavin Newsom could have responded right away and try to quell this disturbance down there, but he supports sanctuary cities. He supports releasing criminal aliens to the streets every day.
President Trump has put on Truth Social, if they spit, we will hit. You've been in law enforcement for decades. Is that the right strategy when things are so tense?
ICE officers will defend themselves. Like I just mentioned, someone threw a Molotov cocktail at an officer. Now, in my situation, doing this for 4 decades, if that would have come close and that officer would have sustained, if that fuel would have dumped on and that Molotov cocktail would have lit that officer up, then he's responsible. I mean, he has all the authority in the world to respond with deadly force.
Mr. Homan,
so
I understand
ICE
that.
officers are going to defend themselves.
A Molotov cocktail, that's a bomb. I get that. And nobody wants to be spit on either. I want to make sure you don't think that we're condoning that either. But I guess it's sort of the temperature check, right? When the president puts out something like that, doesn't it make things hotter?
Look, I think the men and women of ICE and the National Guard are well trained. You've seen the videos. These officers have been hurt. More officers have been hurt than protesters have been hurt. So these people are well trained. They know use of force, the paradigm of use of force. They know when they can take action, when they can't. They've had hundreds and hundreds of hours of training. I trust the men and women in law enforcement to use the proper use of force when needed.
So there's been reports that Stephen Miller has demanded 3,000 people should be deported a day, rounded up and deported a day, and that if not, it's going to lead to firings. Is that something you're going to be able to get to, a goal you'll be able to reach? And is that why you're now targeting day laborers as well?
Look, I agree with Stephen Miller that we need an increase in ICE operations. Man, I've said from day one, I've been asked 1,000 times, am I happy with the numbers? I'm happy we have the most secure border in history of this nation right now, the most secure border ever. I'm happy with that. I'm happy that ICE arrests have tripled the number of arrests under Joe Biden. But because what I just said, 4 years of open border, millions of illegal aliens released in this country, many are public safety threats. We have a big job to do. So, yeah, we know when ICE arrests 1,000 a day, that's good, but we should be arresting more because we got, right now, as you and I are speaking, we got over 600,000 illegal aliens that we know of with criminal convictions walking the streets of this country. We got to arrest them quicker. We got to make this country safer quicker. Every illegal alien criminal we arrest makes the neighborhoods much safer, again, which is why we need this budget passed to give ICE resources they need to take this operation, make it more efficient, and increase the numbers of people, criminal threats, national security threats that are going to be removed from this country. We need a budget to do that, and I hope they do it, and I hope they do it fast.
Mr. Homan, anything happened over the last few days in Los Angeles that you regret or you wish you would have done differently?
No.
All right, we'll leave it there, Mr. Homan. We appreciate your time and your answers, and thanks for talking to us for such a long period of time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Yep. Now to a bomb threat called in about a Spirit Airlines flight from Detroit to Los Angeles. The FBI says the man who called it in was supposed to be on that flight but missed it. Here's Tom Costello.
It happened at Detroit Metropolitan Airport.
We have a situation, so we unfortunately are going to have to deboard this aircraft, and everybody's going to have to be rescreened.
Spirit Airlines Flight 2145 to Los Angeles on Thursday stopped and held on the runway after a caller phoned in a bomb threat.
If you cooperate with me, which I'd greatly appreciate if you could, I will get this done as quick as I can for you.
Everyone on board removed from the plane and screened on the runway by TSA dogs. But within just a few hours, the FBI said they had their suspect, 23-year-old John Charles Robinson, who allegedly admitted to calling in the threat after arriving too late for the flight and telling the Spirit Airlines rep on the phone there's going to be someone that's going to try to blow up that flight, 2145. When Robinson then showed up for the flight that he'd been rebooked on, he was arrested, now charged with use of a cell phone to threaten, maliciously convey a bomb threat, and phoning in false information. In a statement, the U.S. attorney in Detroit says no American wants to hear the words bomb and airplane in the same sentence. Making this kind of threat undermines our collective sense of security and wastes valuable law enforcement resources.
Tom Costello joins us now. So, Tom, as you mentioned, that passenger has been charged. What's next for him?
Yeah. He's out right now on a $10,000 bond. He has a court appearance coming up on June 27th. We reached out to his public defender, did not hear back. And by the way, Spirit says all of the passengers who were on that flight did eventually make their way to Los Angeles, but several hours delayed. Tom,
I got to tell you, you cover a lot of these stories. It has to be somewhat incredible how they caught up to him, right? Sort of the police work, if you will, to catch this guy.
I would just say informationally, he may not have been the smartest suspect because he used the cell phone. He used the cell phone that he made the reservation on to then call in the bomb threat. So it was pretty quick to identify the phone, according to the local authorities.
2 steps and they got him. All right, Tom Costello, we thank you for covering that one. Overseas now, the emotional reunions of Russia and Ukraine exchanging prisoners with desperate families finally seeing their loved ones again. NBC's Richard Engel is in Ukraine with that video and the story.
Today, dozens of Ukrainian prisoners of war were freed in an exchange with Russia. They were greeted to a hero's welcome at a hospital north of Kyiv. But they looked like the living dead, gaunt, heads shaven, their bodies broken, and some said beaten. Oleksandr Kulkov told me he was a prisoner for over 3 years and that the Russians broke his ribs. If nothing was already broken, they would break it, he said. Hundreds of families of missing Ukrainians tried to show the POWs photographs, hoping one of them might have seen their lost father, son, or brother. Olga Serhichuk had no luck. I am happy for those who have been returned, but I am so sorry my husband is not among them, she said. But just a few feet away, Tanya Shestak couldn't contain her joy. A prisoner saw her father 2 days ago and said he's doing well.
This is the first information. Yes. First time you learned that your father is still alive. How are you doing?
Oh, very.
Very exciting. I can feel you squeezing my arm. Wow. The return of the Ukrainian POWs exposed the cost of this war that we don't often see. We think about the dead and the injured, but there are thousands of families on both sides of the conflict who have no idea if their relatives are alive, dead, prisoners somewhere. I met a young woman today who's been looking for her fiancé for the past 3 years. But after today, there's renewed hope that even with peace talks stalled, there'll be more prisoner exchanges. Tom?
Okay, Richard Engel for us. Back here at home to New York City, a former girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs back on the stand in his sex trafficking and racketeering trial, testifying under the pseudonym Jane to protect her identity. This time she's answering questions from the defense. NBC's Chloe Malas was inside the courthouse and joins us live now. So, Chloe, what did we learn today during the cross-examination of Jane?
Hey there, Tom. We learned a whole lot. We learned during Jane's testimony that at times she hired escorts on her own accord without Combs telling her to. She decided which drugs to take, and at times she would dismiss certain escorts and send them home because she wasn't attracted to them. The importance of that coming out during her cross-examination, Tom, really goes to the element of free will. Was she forced to take part in these hotel nights? Because if she was, and the prosecutors can prove that, it goes to their 2 sex trafficking charges. We also learned a little bit about his routine after these freak-offs, which are also called hotel nights, that he actually enjoyed watching his favorite show afterwards, which happened to be Dateline.
Okay, didn't know that was going there. Chloe, we appreciate your reporting. Thank We are back now with Top Stories newsfeed, starting with a train derailment in a town just outside of Dallas, Texas. Look at this aerial video. It shows more than a dozen train cars containing ethanol overturned in Waxahachie. According to officials, a total of 16 cars jumped the tracks, and so far no leaks have been detected. The city manager says no injuries have been reported and there is no immediate danger to the public, but he had never seen anything of this magnitude. Right now, 27 states are trying to stop the sale of genetic testing company 23andMe. A recently filed lawsuit argues that customers should have to consent to their personal data being sold. It comes as a biotech company seeks court approval to purchase that company. 23andMe, which provided saliva-based DNA testing kits, went public in 2021, but filed for bankruptcy protection in March. And an update to a story we brought you last week, one of 2 instruments stolen from the rock band Heart has been recovered. Police say the Fender Telecaster guitar was returned after investigators used surveillance footage to track down a woman who bought the guitar from the thief. They say she voluntarily gave it up. Police had already charged 57-year-old Garfield Bennett with that theft. The stolen mandolin you see here, still missing. And a consumer alert, a nationwide recall issued for popular nasal and baby teething swabs over possible fungal contamination. That's not good. The voluntary recall includes Zicam Cold Remedy nasal swabs, Zicam nasal all clear swabs, and Oragel baby teething swabs. The company says so far no serious adverse events have been reported. Consumers should stop using the recalled items and are eligible for a full refund. Okay, in Washington tonight, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is facing fierce backlash after removing every single member of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee. That committee, known as ACIP, is made up of top doctors and public health experts who guide the CDC on how vaccines should be used and help shape recommendations for healthcare providers. Kennedy writing in the Wall Street Journal, a clean sweep is needed to reestablish public confidence in vaccine science. I want to bring in Tom Frieden. He's the president and CEO of Resolve to Save Lives, and you may recognize him because he's a former CDC director. Dr. Frieden, so great to have you here. You heard there from the new CDC director, the Health and Human Services Secretary, I should say. What do you say to that?
Well, what we see from Secretary Kennedy is a pattern of untruths, misinformation, and fringe beliefs. And unfortunately, this is now what might guide federal policy, not just on who's recommended to get different vaccines, but whether insurers and the Vaccines for Children program will pay for those vaccines.
I want to get to the science of it in just a second and what this board actually does. But when he brings this up, do you think he has a point whatsoever in saying there's a portion of the American public, maybe a large portion, that has lost trust in what the CDC puts out because of everything that we've learned post-pandemic? And again, it was a novel virus. I always like to remind viewers of that. So a lot of us were learning in real time. But does he have a point when he says that?
There definitely are problems with trust, and we see this actually in every vaccine that's ever been since vaccines were first invented. One thing that you need to do to rebuild trust is to be consistent, to follow the facts, to say the truth. And that's not what we're getting from Secretary Kennedy. We're getting, for example, the claim that there's extensive conflict of interest in this committee. This committee is actually the global model of effective decision-making on vaccines. Now, Secretary Kennedy may not believe that or may not agree with their decisions, but everything they do is fact-based, everything is transparent on the internet, everything live-streamed, and of the current 17 members, One has a potential conflict of interest. That individual, a very distinguished scientist, pediatric infectious disease specialist who did research on vaccine, so she recused herself from any of those decisions.
What's going to happen now, do you think, right? Is there a danger now that there's a vacancy and they're going to have to fill these spots?
There's a big danger. They want to appoint people. Who knows who they'll appoint? We'll have to see. But the danger is that pediatricians, all doctors, all patients won't have fact-based, accurate, transparent information on what the science really shows on whether vaccines protect them.
People are going to be watching this segment, right? They're going to be listening to Secretary Kennedy. They may be confused out there. What's the best advice? Is it just listen to your doctor?
Absolutely, and your doctor should listen to groups like the American Academy of Pediatricians and different groups that are medical groups that are not being appointed by a politician who has, frankly, fringe beliefs on vaccines.
But, I mean, getting the advice from your doctor is the first place you should start, and then you go from there.
Absolutely. And if you want a valid place for vaccine information, we're going to have to monitor what happens, because until today, most doctors would have gone to the CDC website.
What happens now, do you think, with the CDC and the FDA, with these major changes happening? What are the long-term effects, do you think?
I'm really worried. I'm worried that doctors won't have valid, transparent information to refer to. I'm worried that insurers and the Vaccines for Children program, which provides half of all the childhood vaccines in this country, may not cover vaccines, so people may have to pay for them or lose access. And I'm worried about rebuilding that very trust that Secretary Kennedy says he wants to rebuild.
Talk to me about what happens in say, a pediatric practice, right? Because you have doctors, and we've been covering this on a segment we call Cost of Denial now about the insurance industry and healthcare in America. Doctors are slammed. They're seeing more patients than they ever have before. They're working more than they ever have before. And so a vaccine comes out. And is the onus on them to do the research, or is the shorthand to sort of look up, okay, what does the Academy say? What does the CDC say? Or should they be looking up these vaccines individually?
For more than 60 years, pediatricians and almost all doctors in the U.S. have relied on a vaccine schedule. It's a very simple schedule that outlines who should get which vaccines, how many times, and when. That schedule, now, we may not be able to trust. That's a real concern.
Why?
Because we don't know who this secretary, who has a history of falsehoods about vaccines, is going to appoint to the most important committee that recommends what should be on that schedule.
Dr. Frieden, we've run out of time here, but we thank you for having you here and explaining all that. We do appreciate it. Okay, we want to turn back now to our top story, the Trump administration's immigration raids from coast to coast. Tonight, we're speaking with one teenager impacted personally by the crackdown. Marcelo Gomez da Silva is 18 years old, attending high school in Massachusetts. He came to this country on a visitor's visa at just 7 years old, later getting a student visa. He was detained on May 31st on the way to volleyball. The agents, it turns out, were looking for his father, but took him in when they realized his visa had expired. His detainment triggering outrage in his community. His high school classmates, you see here, staging a walkout, and his teammates on the school's volleyball team playing a match in his honor. Then, after 5 days in detention, da Silva granted bail by a judge and released these images capturing his emotional reunion with his family and friends. But tonight, his battle to stay in America, the place he says is his home, is not over. Joining us tonight exclusively on Top Story is Marcelo Gomez da Silva. Marcelo, we thank you for joining us tonight. Do you have any idea if you're going to stay in the United States?
As of right now, I think I will. I mean, it's very likely. Me and my lawyers have been working on this. It's definitely a battle, but we have been taking steps on to do these type of things.
Has that sort of hit you yet? Has it, and I know you just got out, but has that sort of hit you that this may no longer be your home?
Yeah, it's definitely something I thought about there. I was always scared to go back, scared to be deported. It's definitely something I don't want to be, but yeah.
When you were arrested on May 31st, I know you were on your way to volleyball practice. Talk to me about what happened when those ICE agents approached you.
I just pulled into my friend's driveway to pick her up, and he automatically stopped right behind my car. He knocked on my window, and he said, "Get out of the car." And obviously, I was in shock. I didn't know what was going on. I got out. He asked me for my license. I gave it to him. About 15 minutes after, he came back and put me in handcuffs, and he said, "Do you know why you're under arrest?" I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Because you're illegal, you're an immigrant." And he put me in the car.
What did they explain to you after that, and what was going through your head when he told you that?
I was in complete shock. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry or anything. I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't understand what I did wrong. But no, they didn't explain to me what was going on. They didn't tell me what was happening. I was clueless.
Were you even aware of your immigration status and that you may not be up to speed on everything that you needed to know?
No, it's not something that I really paid attention to because, like, I'm a high school student. I didn't think it was something very important. I thought I was pretty caught up on everything because I have, like, a school ID and things like that. I just thought that if I abided by the law, drove correctly and did right things, then I'd be just fine.
ICE has said that you were not the intended target. Your father was. In a statement, I want to put this up for our viewers here. The Department of Homeland Security called him a, quote, known public safety threat, writing in part on X about him. Local authorities notice ICE that this illegal alien has a habit of reckless driving at speeds in excess of 100 miles per hour through residential areas, endangering Massachusetts residents. What do you or your family say to that? Is that true about your father?
My family disagrees. I completely disagree. It is completely untrue. When they pulled me over, they never asked me about my father. They said nothing about my father. They didn't ask me about my family. They knew my name. They knew I was 18. They knew I was going to school. First of all, it's completely impossible to drive 100 miles an hour in a residential area. They could have at least thought a little bit harder to make up a lie. But my dad is the type that I tell him to drive a little faster because he drives so slow and respectfully. He's a really good guy. I love my dad. And I completely disagree with what they said.
Is your father now in hiding because of this?
Yeah, my dad has to stay home for the moment, but me and my lawyers are taking steps at that.
Do you feel that you are an American? If people were to ask you, are you American, what would you tell them?
I say that I was definitely raised in an American environment, but truly I am Brazilian. I was born there. That's my blood. But yeah, I definitely grew up in an American environment, and I would say I'm half. I'm both.
You're both. But you want to stay in America? Do you want to become an American citizen?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to become an American citizen. I want to stay in America for sure. Yeah, this is my community. I love this country.
I know you're a teenager, and I know you were probably thinking about a lot of other things besides this right now. But if people were to come to you and say, listen, at the end of the day, if they look at your paperwork, right, and you are undocumented, you overstayed your visa, you need to be deported, what would you say to those people?
That actually was said to me in the detention center. She didn't say I need to be deported, but she said I could possibly be deported because of it. And I looked at her and I told her, ma'am, I was 7 years old when that happened, when my visa expired. What could I possibly have done at that moment? And she looked at me and she herself got a little sad and she understood, but she didn't really care.
All right, Marcelo da Silva, we thank you for coming on Top Story tonight and sharing your story. We will stay on top of it. Back down with Top Story's Global Watch, a check of what else is happening around the world. We start with Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, testifying before the Supreme Court over his alleged role in a plot to overturn the 2022 election there. Bolsonaro denying having any part in orchestrating a coup to stay in office after failing to be reelected. The far-right leader and 7 of his former associates are being tried for attempting to overthrow the government. Back in January of 2023, thousands of Bolsonaro supporters stormed government buildings and called for a military coup. Israel has deported activist Greta Thunberg after the Gaza-bound ship she was on was seized by Israel's military. New images showing Thunberg on a flight from Israel to France, where she will then continue back to her home in Sweden. Thunberg and other 10 pro-Palestinian activists were aboard a flotilla when they were intercepted. French officials say 5 of their citizens refused to sign deportation orders. They will now face judicial proceedings. And a startling new research pointing to a dramatic decline in emperor penguins across parts of Antarctica. Researchers analyzing satellite images spanning more than a decade, discovering that penguin populations are diminishing faster than expected. Scientists say shrinking sea ice brought on by climate change is a major contributor to the drop. And in Australia, Katy Perry coming face-to-face with an unwelcome surprise at her show in Sydney. A man jumping on stage, attempting to dance with the singer. It turns out it wasn't his first time sneaking past security. NBC's Sam Brock has the videos and the story.
There were definitely fireworks recently at a Katy Perry concert, and not the lyrical kind. The pop star appearing shocked and uncomfortable when a man stormed the stage and popped up on her shoulder. Fans catching footage of the man sprinting down the catwalk, accosting the singer and dancing right next to her.
There's never going to be another show like it, so just enjoy it, Sydney.
Perry nodding to the oddity of the moment as she spun away and security tried to contain him. That intruder, it turns out, has a notorious track record. Johnson Wen is a repeat stage crasher with a TikTok account highlighting his antics. He's described in Australian media reports as a serial pest and prankster. Wen's posted a spate of videos showing him crashing other high-profile events. From the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup final, where he stumbles on the pitch, to the Paris Olympics, the Cricket World Cup final, a Chainsmokers concert that was a little too close for comfort, even a tussle with The Weeknd on stage. The 25-year-old spoke about that incursion with 7 News Australia.
I planned this like months before it even started. Every single stadium I ran on, I always had to face court and get punished for it.
And he's not the only one disrupting performers. BB Rexa falling to the ground after being struck by what looks like an iPhone, and Harry Styles wincing after an apparent strike from a Skittle. And after a fan threw water at Cardi B, she threw her microphone right back. For his latest stunt, Australian police say Wen was arrested and charged with entering enclosed land and obstructing a person in performance of work and duties. Perry's representatives did not immediately respond to requests for comment. After the concert, however, 9 News in Australia getting an exclusive interview with Wen.
How do you keep getting past security?
Magic. Just kidding, I was just too quick.
But after racking up tens of thousands of dollars in fines, Wen says he might have to change his ways.
I'm planning to quit forever because you get way too much trouble for it.
Wait for that. Sam Brock joins us now live in studio. Sam, it seems pretty shocking that someone could just jump on stage like that. I mean, how easy is this?
Yeah, certainly it is shocking. So I think the reality is, talking to security experts, Tom, is just that if this were in one city, let's say this guy was doing it in Chicago or just in Sydney, he'd likely be surveilled, but he is literally flying around the world, crashing events. Now, speaking with a former Secret Service agent specifically about what they bring to the table, he says, we're on the top of our game, but for a lot of these events, they are hiring private contractors to do it. If one person sort of takes their eye off the ball, you are as strong as your weakest link. So they got to tighten the screws on that. Facial recognition could actually be very important in terms of identifying him, but even that, at this stage of the technology, can be beaten if you, for example, wear a hat down that covers up your eyes. So there's no perfect solution here. What he said was stronger penalties to disincentivize this kind of thing. That's what's important.
Sam Brock for us. Sam, thank you for that. We want to turn now to a warning for parents tonight in Top Story's Health Check, a new study showing just how detrimental screen time is for children. Researchers finding that spending too much time behind a screen leads to emotional and behavioral problems, which in turn can cause kids with those problems to use screens to cope, creating what scientists call a vicious cycle. Joining me now is Dr. Gail Saltz. She's an associate professor of psychiatry at the New York Presbyterian Hospital School of Medicine. Dr. Saltz, thanks so much for being here. This is something we've obviously known a lot about. It seems like every report that comes out says screens are dangerous. What's new about this one? They just have to keep reminding parents?
No, actually, what's new about this one is it followed kids over time, which many other studies have not, and that tells us something about cause and effect. So this one's sort of a real nail in the coffin.
What stood out to you on this one, the research in this one?
That it was a large number, that it was over time, that it is this vicious cycle, that kids will go back to it as a way to comfort themselves, that girls struggle more with the internalizing effects, the anxiety, the depression, the low self-esteem, and boys develop more of the problems with aggression and hyperactivity. And boys...
How does the tablet make them hyper-aggressive or more aggressive? How does that work?
You know what? Boys and girls have different reactions to internal states that are distressing. Men are more quick to anger.
Yeah.
Girls are
pointing
more...
at me like I'm
sorry. Not accusing you, but it's true.
You just met me. No.
It's true. And girls are more likely to struggle with depression. So it's sort of following that path. And also, that boys are more likely to spend time gaming than girls. And gaming is a particularly pernicious, difficult part of screen time.
What do you think needs to happen? Because, we've been talking about this. I think we have the research my producers gave me here for years now about screen time. I mean, what needs to be done so parents sort of get it in their heads, or at least children also understand that this is super dangerous?
Look, staying away from the screen is a lot more work for parents.
Yeah.
So, parents don't really want to believe this because, frankly, it just makes their jobs harder. But I think they need to know that, in fact, the consequences will be such that they need to do these things. So they have to start early. They have to delay that screen time as long as they possibly can. They have to keep it in public rooms. They have to put controls. They have to do a lot of things. They have to focus on in real life events for their kids instead of the screen.
What's the difference from when we were growing up, right? Watching TV. Some kids would veg out watching the cartoons, and people would say, oh, the TV is going to rot your brain.
Right.
I mean, what is the difference with the screen?
Because screens are interactive, so they provide the positive reinforcement. You won. You got a star. This child said something which stirred you in some way. That positive reinforcement, that's addictive. It keeps them engaged in a different way than passive watching.
I think it's also endless content, right? We used to have reruns. Remember that? You'd have to stop watching because you saw it 4 times. Now they can scroll forever. Doctor, so great to have you here. We really do appreciate it. Up next, from grandma to grad, the grandmother giving the label super senior a whole new meaning. Her college graduation, 60 years in the making, why it took so long, and how she finally made her dream come true. That's next. Finally tonight, an achievement nearly 6 decades in the making. 88-year-old Joan Alexander was forced to drop out of her teaching program 60 years ago. Now she's finally collecting her diploma, proving it's never too late to achieve your dreams.
The year was 1959, and Joan Alexander was getting ready to graduate from the University of Maine with hopes of becoming a teacher. But then came the big news. She and her husband were expecting. At the time, pregnant women weren't allowed to participate as student teachers.
All these years, I hadn't realized that I had this big hole in my life, and that's what it was, the lack of the diploma.
As years went by, Joan's family grew, and she began volunteering in schools, helping young preschool children learn to read. Her 4 daughters would eventually all graduate from college. But over the years, Joan's youngest, Tracy, said something was missing.
So I felt like it was important for her to have that degree that she earned.
So last year, Tracy called the University of Maine and made her mother's case.
Why did you want to do this for your mom?
It always made me kind of sad to think that she'd done everything that she could do and that she wasn't able to get this degree.
The university looked into it and determined Joan did meet the student teaching requirement.
I think he said, Mom, you're going to be a graduate. We both cried.
That day, the super senior making history. At age 88, Joan became the oldest undergrad to receive a degree from the University of Maine.
After I got it, that hole filled up, and I felt like I was a finished person.
Congratulations to Joan. We thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.